Well, it's exciting to be back with you. We're in week 6 now. Hard to believe we're this far along, but we're now going to look at another topic on grace from Galatians 3, a powerful book on grace, the book of Galatians. And the topic is grace brings freedom. The essence of the book of Galatians is really a group of people who we would in the modern evangelical church identify who were very hardworking, dedicated, committed to church attendance and doing things for God. But there had been this drift and this slipping away from trusting in grace versus their human performance. It's called legalism in some areas, or Phariseeism, maybe you might want to say, where religious leaders, and it's so easy for us to do this too, guys, just to move from grace back into religious performance. So Paul uses in Galatians this word liberty and freedom multiple times. He says this, "Stand therefore fast in your liberty or freedom, by which Christ has made you free, and don't be entangled anymore to a yoke of bondage." Galatians 5:1. What's the bondage? The bondage is going back to the bad math that I've got to make sure all my good things outweigh my bad things, or I've got to be sure God's pleased with my effort and what I'm bringing to the table. When we ask those questions, we have missed grace, because I'm not pleasing by my effort. I'm pleasing because of Jesus. I'm pleasing because of what He did. So that grace sets me in a place I'm free from religious striving. So the yoke of bondage is to drift from grace back into effort. The bad equation that I think that we would live a life under is I please God and get His favor by hard work and effort. Sounds pretty American, doesn't it? Sounds pretty respectable and things that we would admire in a person. But when it comes to the gospel, my friends, it's not like that at all. Pleasingness doesn't come through effort. What if I was a quadriplegic and could move none of my arms and legs? I could do very little. Would I lose my sense of pleasingness because I couldn't accomplish? And the gospel says no. Every form of life is beautiful in Christ, and when I can't accomplish something, I'm still pleasing because of grace. Why is that? Because we want to take the credit for being pleasing and worthy of favor, and God says, you're not worthy of favor because of you. You're worthy of favor because of who I am. I love you. I like my children. You know, if a kid, this is a funny example, but if a kid was learning how to walk and they weren't really learning it very fast and they kept stumbling and falling, if I as a father said, "That's it, you're no longer a son or a daughter, you're done, your performance is so poor in this walking department, you've not met the grade, I'm going to kick you out of the family." That sounds really silly, but a lot of us could live that way before God. We could be constantly measuring and be in perfectionism and performance, and we miss it. Paul even says this, "Foolish Galatians, are you, having begun by grace in the Spirit to be free, have you now decided to be made perfect by the flesh?" Let's contrast those two a minute. Flesh represents effort. Flesh represents what I produce, what I can do. The Spirit represents what God does and what He's able to do. See, the kingdom, salvation, transformation, words like being justified, which is the theological word, or made right, or even sanctified, which means being made into the image of Jesus, those happen by the Spirit, by grace. They don't happen by my effort. This is what we have to learn, especially in today's lesson, that grace and the life of grace is an overflow. That's the key. Instead of effort, I'd like to switch our attention from effort to overflow. I receive the grace of God, mercy for my sin, power when I'm weak, favor when I don't deserve it. And then my effort, my friends, my service to Christ, using my gifts, is simply a joyful, thankful giving away again to someone else of the overflow of what I've received. Paul said, Jesus said, freely you've received, freely give. So that's the message of grace. There's a striving, it says, that leads to death and bondage. That's the flesh. There's a grace that leads to rest and freedom. So please, as we discuss this week, be aware and maybe have conversation around where and why our heart would go towards religious performance versus grace. Let's rest in the freedom and joy of grace.